Biovore. One wrong move and you're dead. The Biovore is by far the most frustrating extremist. Maybe it's a skill issue, but the spores are hard to dodge and it has very few weak spots without shield. And when two of them show up together, the whole battlefield turns into a minefield. Alright, so the Biovores. I've actually been kind of enjoying fighting them recently, only because I get within melee and they just go for melee. I feel like Biovores are like, honestly, very aggressive. Normally you can just see them running around and, running away from you to set up spore mine traps or whatever. But whenever you're near them and they kind of like catch an eye with you, more often than not, they're going to throw a melee attack. And that's been my most reliable way to take out Biovores, outside of using grenades. Basically just getting close to them, having them, strike me, parry, and then go for the gun strikes. But ultimately, I do understand what they're talking about here when there's two Biovores, or even three. Yeah, they are tanky, dude. They are shielded enemies that can spawn spore mines. It's interesting because it's kind of weird that we go through phases as a community in this game. It's like zoanthropes are a big deal, but then the sniper gets buffed. So zoanthropes aren't that big of an issue anymore because the sniper can just snipe them out and you see more snipers. But then it's like, oh, now we're kind of seeing this resurgence of Biovores kind of becoming an issue because most of the times when I'm on a team with randoms, a lot of times when a Biovore shows up, we are either just leaving that room, like entirely, like going on an elevator and, just avoiding that fight, or there's at least one guy that just chases the Biovore all over the place. We try to follow him, but he still just gets absolutely deleted by spore mines. So you really, really need to be on a good team to like accurately take down a Biovore. Too often am I seeing players kind of split up in these scenarios. Too often am I seeing players just go down instantly because they just like bum rush the Biovore and then just get pelted with spore mines. It's for me, it's not really an issue that Biovores are just overpowered. It's basically, for Biovores, it's kind of like they show up and then you kind of can see what your team is made out of in a sense. There's a lot of times when a Biovore shows up and I feel like there's at least one player who panics. And I think, honestly, it can kind of be a struggle just getting the Biovores, just getting some damage onto the Biovores. That's why I'm definitely saving shocks and crack grenades for Biovores. Yeah, you can definitely throw a shock grenade to slow them down, which is nice. That was definitely a nice thing the comments have taught me. But ultimately, shock grenades slow down pretty much everything they touch. So it does make sense that the shock grenades are really good against the Biovores. But like, yeah, I also like using crack grenades. But yeah, the Biovores can be very melee aggressive, so you can definitely set up a good gun strike. But okay, regardless, for at least this post, they are kind of making the statement that the Biovore is by far the most frustrating extremist, which I think is a pretty good conversation to have. Comparing the Biovore to like zoanthropes is definitely pretty interesting because I think they're both pretty deadly, but like honestly, zoanthropes are easier to take out. So at this point, I'm not actually surprised that the Biovore is, rising the ranks of the enemy hierarchy in a sense, that they are actually becoming even more annoying than zoanthropes. So let me know in the comments if you feel like the Biovores are the most frustrating extremist enemy, if this enemy has finally become the top dog in the extremist food chain. He is also extremely dangerous in melee and can stun lock you to death if you miss your parry. Yeah, I definitely should have mentioned something like that. Yeah, it is ultimately pretty easy to get stun locked by the Biovore because the Biovore has this unblockable close-range spore mine cannon shot that he follows up from his melee attacks. Basically, he jumps in with a melee and then does the unblockable cannon. And yes, that can potentially stun lock you, and considering that there might be spore mines in the area, yeah, it is a bad time if you miss your parry against the Biovore. So I definitely wanted to point out that if you miss your parry, you're kind of going to have a hard time. So you really, really want to be on your guard when you are near melee range with Biovores. And it does take practice to kind of recognize their attacks. But there's a lot of times, if the Biovore doesn't like immediately scurry away, the Biovore is going to raise their like front talons, I guess. They're gonna raise their hands a little bit in a way to like telegraph that they're gonna melee you. So just be careful of those sort of animations of them kind of like raising their front claws. Yeah, normally when they do that, they go for the melee directly afterwards. And yeah, considering what difficulty you are on, you can definitely go down pretty quick if you miss the parry. So I will say, this is a good way to kind of practice Biovores. Go on like Ruthless or maybe even Substantial, and when you find one, just go and melee attack him. You know what I mean? Go and find a way to get him to melee you. Make sure you can find your parry, because that is ultimately going to be the best way to chip down the health bar of a Biovore in higher difficulties, is basically just landing a good gun strike and then maybe a grenade or something. But regardless, getting a gun strike on the Biovore is a great way to get them down. So they are very handsy. They can definitely just immediately melee you if you are within range. So be on your guard. I would definitely suggest practicing some parries on the Biovore on lower difficulties, Substantial and Ruthless mostly, because then you can at least guarantee an Extremist spawn. I think if it weren't for the armor on the head when it's in turret mode, it would be a lot more manageable. As a sniper, even with the 50% guard penetration perk, it takes way too many headshots from a LF or bolt sniper, and body shots to the turret do way too little damage for most guns to be worth it. Oh, this is actually an interesting note. Is this true? If you use the guard penetration perks, this works for the Biovore? Is that true? I thought it said blocking. Well, yeah, you know what? A shield icon does come up. That's okay. That's interesting. That's actually kind of interesting. So yeah, the headshots, the guarded headshots. I do think it's unique. Honestly, I kind of like the way the Biovore's designed. It's just spore mines, dude. Honestly, if spore mines didn't do as much damage as they did, I would think the Biovore is kind of like a perfect enemy archetype, to be completely honest. Because though I do like the way it kind of like turrets and like runs around and stuff. Like, that's pretty sick. And honestly, the Tyranid guns are starting to feel very unique to me. It's interesting. It's like they kind of like they're a hive mind, right? So they can practically adjust their cells or something to become guns. I don't 100% understand how the Biovore grew that turret, but it's still such a sick looking turret. I do like the armored Biovore as well, the extra armor the Biovore comes with. It's really, to me, just the spore mines being absolute run killers that make it kind of not worth it to engage Biovores in certain scenarios. So ultimately, I would like to see the spore mines at least nerfed, but as far as the guard penetration and yeah, the stun locking, everything else with the Biovores seemed pretty fine, to be completely honest. But yeah, ultimately, you definitely want to aim for the cannon, but I know if it's not in turret mode, you can definitely hit headshots, but it's very fast, so it's kind of like it might not be worth it. Ultimately, yeah, definitely save your grenades for Biovores. As a team, you definitely want to zero in on the Biovore, like pin it, you know how you can like ping the enemies? If you ping it and you don't notice your teammates going directly at it, yeah, I don't know. You really should just kind of play around what your teammates are doing. If you ping it and you notice your teammates are going directly at the Biovore, follow them. If you ping it and you notice your teammates are running away, follow them, I guess. I think their design is BS, but baiting them into close quarter combat is usually the fastest way to kill them if you're not using Tactical's Mark for Death perk or Heavy with prep time for some plasma shots. Prep time heavy. Yeah, no, to be completely honest, yeah, the plasmas are really, really good against the Biovores. That splash damage really makes sure that you either stun them or get some damage on them. Getting them tied up is best. If they can't anchor, they're not effective. Every class has at least one thing you can do to wreck them in close quarters combat. You just have to find what works for you. With Sniper, I parry Gunstrike and do 2 to 3 hip-fire headshots, and they're executionable afterwards. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I will admit, yeah, hip-fire headshots after a parry, that's definitely insane. I still have to aim after my, parry Gunstrikes headshots with the Sniper. Yeah, I still just aim. I just aim. The hip-fire is pretty cool, though. I do hear from time to time that hip-fire is a lot more accurate than I assume, essentially. I just hear that hip-fire is pretty good. So maybe that's something I should start to work on. But yeah, hip-fire... Or yeah, getting a headshot after a parry Gunstrike with Sniper is really, really good. Getting one on Biovore is very impressive. Definitely you should try that out one day. And yes, Mark for Death definitely works. You just have to make sure you time it correctly to where, their head isn't being covered by armor. You just want to make sure that you get the scan, get the headshots, most likely when they're moving around, and I believe that is the way to trigger Mark for Death for the Biovore, essentially getting a good one-shot on them. I actually love dueling them, to be honest. I think you just need to find the combo that works for your class and loadout. For Block Hammer at level 25, it's pistol for a moment until it goes out, aftershock, jetpack, ground pound, execute, move on. It will differ on class and weapons, but there should be good ways for other weapons as well. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It is, see, I agree with this comment, ultimately. Like, the fact that they like dueling the enemies that they, basically get used to and understand the way to attack them and approach them, that is definitely a big part of enjoying higher difficulties, is knowing your loop, essentially. So this guy has one pistol into aftershock into ground pound execute. Like, yeah, as long as you understand like your combos, essentially, you can definitely get through most, if not all, of this game, as far as you know the enemy's breakpoints and exactly what you need to take down the Biovore. You can just save a lot of time just understanding your loop and exactly how you want to approach them. If you just jump at Biovores without knowing what you're doing, I mean, trial and error, you'll probably learn something, right? But ultimately, you're going to be in a tough position and you could get frustrated if you consider the fact that, hey, you know what? There are spore mines that can one-shot you. So, yeah, your trial and error might have a lot of error, but you still have to learn exactly what your class does to approach the Biovore. I will admit, though, as an assault player also, sometimes just ground pounding, sometimes just using your jump pack and just slamming down onto a Biovore can be very risky, depending on if they're in turret mode or not, because essentially you can just jump right into a huge spawn of spore mines and take yourself out. So yeah, definitely be careful. The block hammer is kind of interesting for Biovores. It's kind of like, for me personally, I definitely have better, better results doing the parries. But I imagine block hammer is also really good. Yeah, that's the one thing about Biovores that's kind of messed up for me at the moment, is I do not have much practice with the blocking against Biovore, so I definitely need some practice with that. But ultimately, I still like doing the parry gun strikes, and that, that definitely gets the job done. Brothers, its main gun is unarmored, so is its backside. Do not aim for the body or head, especially when locked down, as it will shrug it off. The back or head, brothers. Heavy plasma can blast it out with 3 shots on absolute. Okay. All right. So yeah, definitely try to blast out the Biovores from the backside with the plasma incinerator. Okay, I'm sorry, that's very immature to laugh at, but ultimately, I think this guy accidentally made this sound a bit funnier than it needed to be. Oh boy. Okay, so, honestly, from what I've been reading, it sounds like a lot of people are actually struggling with Biovores, so I really hope we had some good notes to actually take down the Biovore in this video. Ultimately, it does seem like people are getting a little bit sick of spore mines, and yes, generally, it does feel like the Biovore, whenever it shows up, can definitely change the tide of the operations. This is interesting. This is definitely interesting, because it's interesting to see how, like, everyone hated zoanthropes. There was actually 1 or 2 notes of zoanthropes in this comment section, of people still thinking they have, rougher moments against zoanthropes. But ultimately, like, zoanthropes don't have armor, and they don't spam spore mines, so I'm not surprised Biovores are starting to, basically become one of the most problematic enemies we have at the moment. But yeah, let me know in the comments how you feel about the Biovores. Do you think they are now at the top of the enemy food chain? Outside of Terminus enemies, of course. But yeah, it does feel like there's a lot of people struggling with Biovores right now. There's definitely a lot of people who are asking to take away the armor and stuff. And look, I've actually seen a few comments who are kind of concerned with, me covering some of the problems that come with balancing in this game. I'm not advocating to make the game easier. I just want to point that out. I do think there's good and bad ways you can go up, you can approach balancing this game. So, like, taking off the armor for the Biovore is definitely something I would not agree with. I think that's a very unique trait of the Biovore, and it's not too difficult to understand the movements and, you know, the moveset of the Biovore, and to try to find some way you can deal with it with your favorite class. Ultimately, I do think every class can deal with the Biovore. But yeah, I still think Spore Mines are a little bit overtuned. The only reason I talk about like nerfs or buffs when it comes to enemies is just to basically make sure that the game is balanced ultimately. And we've been talking a lot about Spore Mines and Stunlocks recently, where it feels like Spore Mines on paper just do a little bit too much. And, you know, with how much we criticize the Bulwark's healing ability for Icon and such, yeah, Icon wouldn't nearly be as, you know, basically as requested as it is if we didn't have Spore Mines that can potentially one-shot you. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's why these balance discussions are important, because there's one situation we have with Icon that kind of can blow out of proportion, because we also have these hazards that are capable of one-shotting you. So, like, yeah, ultimately, I think the Biovore doesn't need a nerf. However, I do think Spore Mines definitely need a little bit of an adjustment to just feel a little bit more balanced in the game. So yeah, I don't know. We will see. We will see what the devs decide to do with Spore Mines or Icon or whatever. I'm just saying it all kind of goes into each other. We wouldn't need to rely on Icon if we didn't get absolutely obliterated by hazards in this game, to the point where you can legit just lose runs randomly because Spore Mines spawn in. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. I don't think the Biovores need a nerf, but I do think Spore Mines need an adjustment. I've been saying this quite a bit. No, I don't want the game to become easier, but I still think when it comes down to like balancing classes and such, we still have to keep in mind the hazards that we are dealing with, because the insane damage from the Spore Mines, you know, we can't parry Spore Mines, you know? So we need some way to clear up the damage we get from Spore Mines. If they do a lot of damage, we need something that heals a lot. So that's kind of where the Icon reliability starts to pop in, where people are kind of relying a lot on Icon and other healing mechanics to basically just clear up their health pool, because they got hit with one Spore Mine. Like, you know what I mean? It can just, yeah, that's why these balance discussions are important. I'm not trying to make the game easier or anything, especially right now. We're seeing a lot of players die because they are low levels and such, jumping into higher difficulties. But yeah, regardless, let me know in the comments how you guys feel. I know this discussion can go so many different ways when it comes to, you know, dealing with balance in this game. But ultimately, I do think Biovores are a very fun threat to deal with. I just don't like dealing with Spore Mines. But yeah, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about that. Thanks for watching.